Okay, so we decided, since Melissa's a third-year student, we'd only make a talk for about 10 minutes, so Annie suggested that maybe I could do a little bit of background about restoration in Hamilton City. Some of you know more than me for this, but we'll give it a go. I supervise Melissa in a summer research project. It's this way of increasing students' education over summer, as well as giving them a little bit of money so that they don't starve to death. And it's quite a good way of getting experience in a wide variety of fields. So I'll do a quick, hopefully, intro of restoration in Hamilton, and it hopefully feeds into the restoration of Seeley's Gully. So just a quick map of the Waikato region in the past. So pre-1840, that's around when Europeans arrived. The main vegetation type is forest. There was some wetlands and things like that. The majority was forest. And then present day, you can see it's essentially been decimated. Looking a bit closer, good old friend Google Earth. I don't know if we want the lights down a bit more for this.
Grab the bottom two.
Yeah, excellent. So you can see this little line that represents about 16 k's. So that's essentially what I thought might be the closest patch of semi-decent sized bush to Seeley's. And here's the little Seeley's Gully here with Hamilton, Boys High. So it's a big number, 10%. So for restoration purposes, for keeping biodiversity, we want to try and reach a 10% threshold. So the 10% threshold from research has been shown that you need that amount so that you don't lose biodiversity, that you can have sustainable populations. There's been research done on the cities of New Zealand and where Hamilton fits into that. So you can see the yellow line there is the 10%. The nice blackish grey is total Indigenous, and all of New Zealand cities are falling underneath that line, so that's not exactly helpful. This is at 0K buffer, so that's urban, so this is built up area. It's not what the city boundary is, it's what the urban area boundary is. Then they looked, this is from Clarkson, Wehe and Braden research. 5K's out, Hamilton's there again, and the trend you might notice is Hamilton, no matter how far out you go, is always around the bottom. It's always below the 10, and we want to essentially try and fix this, because this is telling us that we will have biodiversity loss. No matter how much you try and put in, you need the percentage cover. And it has been shown for the tui that everyone's worked so hard, that you need this surrounding area to be preserved so that these populations can thrive. So this is a few species. This is just putting in pretty pictures of birds and animals we want. So threats to this biodiversity is invasive weeds. I'm sure everyone has fun with their Tradescantia in this gully as well as others. Vertebrate pests, nice little rats, mice, possums. Not only do they destroy vegetation, but also animals. You might not think rats destroy vegetation, but they do eat seeds and things like that. Surrounding land use, because it is an urban area, not only the fact that it's urban and you can't plant anything, but also the water runoff has an effect. And habitat sustainability, so the size and connectivity of these things. The mitigation side of things is the weed control that everyone goes in, and people like Shepherd and do, and all of you guys. And the connectivity, so it's good that Hamilton Boys High is here, because that's part of the connectivity of the gully. And interactions with landowners, not only getting them involved in the gully, but making sure that they don't detriment your work. Melissa can have a little point about that one. And creation of long-term strategies like this restoration plan, like plans like the Waiwhakarepa plan and others around the place, Hammond Bush, to have not only funding but also a vision and goal. And next one to look at is 20 years. So research done by Masters and PhD students at our university has shown that 20 years is a key, and 20 years plus for restoration projects is a key. And this is because when you restore, you build up canopy. This cuts down the light levels. This in turn cuts down herbaceous species. And it also, with planting all these plants, you are reducing this exotic species richness in the seed population. So it increases the likelihood that if something growing up will be a native, which is awesome. Over the 20 years, stabilisation of soil temperatures and also stabilisation of humidity. And this is important for our native forest species. And this in turn directly increases the native vegetation density, the species richness of natives, and also epiphyte colonisation, so increasing the structural diversity of the forests. Just another little report that was done in the past, 2011. The significant natural areas around Hamilton were resurveyed. They were done in the past about 2005. And Gully was one of the higher areas of restoration of nicer natural areas, especially if you discount the peat lakes, which are water. And since I'm a terrestrial ecologist, I often discount the peat lakes. And also the gullies have this good thing about often they are connected to the river, or hopefully eventually as well. And things since the Seeley's Gully, so from the 2005 survey to 2011, it had an increase of size. It had an increase of vegetation types from plantings done by the council and Seeley, and it had an increase pest and weed control. And this all helped with the diversity of the area. And, of course, there's challenges, the connectivity. So Boys High was also a significant natural area in this survey, but we also have a disconnect with the river along in Seeley's. And it's continued pest and weed control. Obviously, these areas always need pest and weed control, and vegetation stability. So making sure that once you've got a canopy there, that you have a canopy stay there. So now we go on to Melissa. She's going to talk about the lovely map she's made. If you want to do a pointy thing, it's this little green button.
So first of all, Toni and I, we met up with a few members of the Seeley Gully community group, and we discussed what was wanted from the summer research scholarship. After this initial meeting, I went out in the field with a GPS and identified all the current features in the gully, for example, like the bridges and pathways and stuff. This was beneficial as I hadn't been to Seeley's Gully before, and it gave me an opportunity to gain a perspective of what it looked like, but also what was required to restore it. So to create the planting zone map, a series of steps were required, but I won't tell you them all, otherwise you get bored. The initial step was getting an aerial image of Seeley's Gully and Hamilton Boys High and making an outline of the significant natural area. This was then overlaid with a slope analysis tool, which allowed us to identify the several landform types present in Seeley's Gully, based on their slope angle, and these being displayed on the map above. The steep hills are those highlighted in pink. These had a slope angle greater than 25 degrees and were free draining. The hill section of the map is the green and accounted for the areas that were less than 25 degrees in angle, and were free draining and may be subject to a little bit of erosion. The lowland area of Seeley's Gully is a yellow and orange, and it remains fairly wet year round and has relatively consistent temperatures, which is crucial for the establishment of successional plants. So I'm not very good at speaking. This map reveals the features currently present in Seeley's Gully, for example the bridges, the streams, the paths. In addition to this, it has also been sectioned into planting units and additional planting zones. This size of each planting unit is 250 metres squared, which was recommended by the council. The open hill and wetland areas, which can be identified as the yellow or like slightly greeny kind of colour, which is that area there, were considered to be their own areas as they required low-growing plant species to maintain the view of the lake. The light blue lines were the drains, which were originally created by Alan Seeley himself. However, after discussion, it is thought that these drains are to be reverted back to their natural pathway and therefore not require like continuous maintenance. So, in addition to identifying the features, I also went out into the forest and I did like all the kanuka trees. Quite a long process. Within the gully, because many of these species are reaching like the end of their lifespan, they are subject to canopy collapse, which can create areas of high light intensity and therefore promote weed growth. So after consultation with Gerard from the council, we came up with the recommendation of removing 1 to 2 kanuka per year, starting from the lowland areas. This was the most affected area. However, don't worry, you don't have to remove all of them at once. There's a lot in there. After removal, the area is to be left for a year to promote soil regeneration, and then it will be planted with natives like after 2 years. So this map identifies each planting unit and its relevant successional stage. The dark green areas are developed areas. The developed areas are those that contain like mature trees with an established canopy. They have like a consistent microclimate, and are at the stage whereby like specialist species can be introduced, for example, epiphytes. As you can see, this is the majority of Seeley's Gully. Late successional areas are those which are greater than 20 years of age. They have a closed canopy in the beginnings of the understory. This forest type occurred mainly on the outer edges of the gully. And it is important to note that the late successional like areas, which are interspersed within the developed areas, are those that like will regenerate, or how am I saying this? So like they're from future kanuka removal, so they'll turn into like. Sorry, I'm not really good at it. Okay. Sorry, the middle successional areas are those that are highlighted in lime green and include the viewing zone, as well as the areas such as units 3 and 4, which have already had the kanuka removed from the area. The majority of early successional areas were at the start of Seeley's Gully, as you guys probably well know because they're just here. It is also important to note when you're looking at this map that if you begin like enrichment plantings, you should start from one area and build out from that area. This will be easier for you guys to maintain, and it'll be like instead of scattering your efforts across the gully. So what I failed to mention was that me and Toni also did a vegetation survey to identify all the plants found in Seeley's Gully, both exotic and native. It was found that 96 species were present in the gully and that 146 could potentially be introduced. I got this number by doing a literature review kind of thing of like similar forests around the Hamilton area and seeing if they were suited to Seeley's Gully. So we created a planting list based on landform, and in total we suggest planting 202 of this species, this including the plants that are already there as well as the ones that we obtained from the other list. Their life-form type would range from trees, shrubs, sedges, rushes, grasses, epiphytes and ferns, which you already have a few of those in the gully. So we know that you guys might not be able to source all the plants that we've recommended, but we thought it'd be beneficial to give you them just in case the availability changes, and so you've got them there. And like the planting recommendations are outlined in the report that we wrote for you as well. Yeah. So I'd just like to thank you guys very much for giving me the opportunity. Sorry, this is last minute. So the map has an associated table where planting units, landform type and successional stage can be found. This information can be used in to work out what species should be planted in each unit, and I'll let Toni take over for the rest of it. Oh yeah, and thank you guys very much. I really appreciate it.
Okay, we're switching again because I decided to have a play with like a species selection tool. And we haven't passed it on because we're trying to work out the bugs as well. And then I couldn't get my computer to go today, so I haven't actually got it here. Yay. So anyway, it's an Microsoft Access-based database. I have to figure out if you guys can actually use it, otherwise we can use Excel or something similar as well. Part of it was just training for me to figure out how to use Access. So you press the Start button, and then you use the table that Melissa just showed you to say if you're doing lowland early, or so what landform type and what development stage. And you also add in what areas, metres squared, you're putting in. And then it pops up with a planting list, and you select the species that you want to use or are available. And then you close out of there because I had no fancy way of doing that. And you go back and press the button saying number of plants needed, and it should pop up with a list of species, common name, landform type, successional stage, and how many plants you need. There is one thing to note, and this is one of the reasons I use this one, is some of the species might be, you don't really want to just plant 2 of a tree at a time. So you might have to look at the list and go, do we really want to do that one now? Or maybe we should just kick out the lit cow this year and chuck it in with another year, and so it builds it up. So you're planting decent sized populations at a time. So that's essentially the end of our presentation. It was a fun experience, and Mel's been a really good student to work with, and I'm so glad she decided to come along today, since the project did finish in the start of February, so this is a bit of extra, so yay!